from the moment that Ringo hatched from his large white egg. His mother and father knew that something was wrong. The other flamingo chicks were already standing and plodding along behind their parents. But Ringo did not stand up. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't seem to make his legs move. His mother and father did all they could to help him up, but it was no use. Ringo would never be able to stand up or walk, as he had hatched with legs that simply didn't work. In the days, months, and years that followed, Ringo's parents took great care of him. They kept him fed well with fresh water shrimps, and they snuggled up closely to him during the cooler nights and brought water in their large beaks for drinking and for washing himself. And Ringo was usually very happy, and his cheerful nature helped him make friends, and he became a popular member of the flock. The other flamingos would often visit him and tell him wonderful stories of their long journeys across Africa and of the places they had seen. And they also helped him to move by huddling together and lifting him into the shade or to a new spot of his choice along the lakeside. And Ringo loved their company, but there were also times when he quite liked to be alone, as they did tend to spoil and fuss him. Sometimes all he wanted to do was sit quietly and think. And the other flamingos understood and knew when he needed a little time to himself. Well, that's very kind of them, isn't it? Sometimes we do like to be by ourselves, and that's okay too. It was during moments like this that Ringo occasionally felt sad. He would watch the other flamingos and wish he could march like tall soldiers as they did, or race across the surface of the lake and sweep high into the bright blue sky. But he couldn't. Life around the lake was always very busy, with flamingos constantly flying in and out. And Ringo loved to watch the comings and goings, and he knew every flamingo in the flock. However, one particular day, a stranger arrived who Ringo had never seen before. He had flown in from across the plains, and he took one look at Ringo and began to laugh at his little legs and make fun of his tiny feet. This made Ringo very sad and angry inside, but he tried not to show it. Well, as soon as the flock heard what was going on, they marched the stranger off. And he was never seen again. Phew! Days around the lakeside changed very little, but there was one that Ringo and the flock would never forget. It all began as it usually did. Ringo was sitting at the shore, sipping beaks of cool water, and the other flamingos were busy, as they always were at that time of the day, sifting for shrimps in the shallows. And Ringo was the first to notice that something was different. The sky was redder than he had ever seen it before at sunrise. The rays of sunlight seemed to be dancing wildly in the sky. What do you think it could be? Fire! Fire! Shrieked a passing flamingo. Fire! Fire! The whole flock panicked and took flight into the sky, leaving Ringo stranded and alone. And the flames grew closer and closer, and Ringo became more and more frightened. The air was thick with smoke and was scorching hot. But Ringo was not alone. Through the smoke, he could see a tiny chick quivering on a nest nearby. Its mother must have left it as the flock began to panic. Oh, He knew he must protect it from the heat and the flames, but how could he get to it? Using all of his strength, he stretched out his neck. Let's stretch out our neck, everyone. And he pulled his body across the shoreline by digging his beak into the sticky mud and flapping his wings. There we go. Finally, although exhausted, he reached the little chick and tucked it under his tummy feathers. By now, the flames were so close that they began to scorch Ringo's tail feathers and burn his skin. But he didn't move. He kept the chick safely underneath his wing. And then, just as it looked as if Ringo would be smothered by the flames, they began to die down. Very good. The wet mud along the lakeside had dampened the fire, and soon it was completely out. Thank goodness! Knowing it was now safe, the flock returned to find Ringo, a little scorched and covered in soot, but with a great big smile on his face. How could he be smiling at a time like this? They thought. Look, said Ringo, as out from beneath his wing popped the fluffy chick. The whole flock cheered, hooray! And told Ringo how brave he was. He felt so proud. The chick's mother had been so frightened that she didn't return to the lakeside. So Ringo adopted the chick as his very own. It loved Ringo very much, and he took great care of it. And Ringo's bravery was never forgotten. The flock would often leave their chicks with him for safety while they went in search for food, or tuck an egg under his tummy to keep warm for them. In fact, Ringo became chief egg and chick sitter. Hooray! And this made Ringo feel very special. And nothing made him happier than the wriggling and chirping of tiny chicks beneath his warm feathers. Now, if you think about it, we learnt a lot of things in that story. For starters, Ringo thought he was a not very good flamingo because he couldn't stand and walk and fly off. But actually, the things that he wasn't so good at made him a better flamingo because he was able to look after all of the other baby chicks and help everybody out. And I think that shows us that sometimes, even if we think that we're not so good at something, we're definitely really good at something else. And it's okay not to be good at everything. Isn't that right, Ringo? We've been using lots of flamingos, and I wanted to show you just a few of these flamingos. So first of all, we've got our really big flamingo, and I've just put my arm all the way up the flamingo's neck and my hands through the beak here. But we also use lots of different flamingos. So we've got a really lovely finger puppet flamingo, which you just put your finger in up here, and you can make it move or sit in your hand like that, however you want to use it. Now we've also got a glove puppet flamingo, which is very soft and cuddly. And much like all of the other glove puppets, you just put your hands in the wings here and your other finger up here in the head. You can make it sit on your hand like this, or fly around, or do funny poses, whatever you would like. Now you can see in the background here, there's lots of other different flamingos. There's one of them here that's not actually a flamingo, but they do work just as nicely, because this one's actually a swan. And you can buy any of these puppets or toys from the Wilbury section or Puppets by Post.